There's a photograph of a jet circulating. Can I go into a little bit of detail? Because everyone's always worried about, like, where's the good evidence? Where's the good photograph?
Right. Show me that photograph again.
Yeah. So it's, there we go.
Now, this was a lost photograph that was recovered, correct?
Yeah. You know about this?
Yeah, I know about this.
Okay, so I heard about this in the late 90s.
Tell everybody about it.
Okay, so there was a guy, Nick Pope, who investigated, he was part of the UFO desk at the Ministry of Defense of England in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. Maybe even as late as early 2000s. But in any case, and I was interviewing him for a number of my films. I did a film called Out of the Blue, I Know What I Saw, before I did The Phenomenon. And I asked him, like, hey, man, you were part of the UFO desk at the MOD. What was the best case you ever saw? And he goes, oh, man, 1990. He didn't give me the town. It was Calvine. But he said Scotland, there were two poachers. They called them hikers, but they were actually poaching. And that's what made me think about this when we were talking about animals earlier. And he said it was late in the afternoon. They were in a place, I now know it's called Calvine, and they came upon, in this relatively remote area, I know because I hiked out to the exact spot, and it's in the movie, and they came upon this diamond-shaped or disc-shaped object that was quite large, that was hovering silently really close. I mean, close. And they were scared to death, and they were kind of hiding out underneath this tree, and they're looking at this thing, what the are we looking at? And they're just looking at this thing as it's silently hovering. Remember, this is 1990, okay? And one of them had a camera. And just as he was considering taking his camera out, a military jet came in. Turns out it was one of those Harrier jet. They think it was a Harrier jet. And it came out into the scene, and it flew all the way around the disc. And as it did so, the guy mustered up the courage, came out from under the tree, and he snapped 5 or 6 photographs of this object suspended in the air. And it went, so the disc is here, and the plane is flying around. It's click, 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 click. And the reason why I know this is because the individual who kept one of the prints, thank you very much, Craig Lindsay, RAF press officer, and thank you, David Clark, for uncovering this, because it's the most amazing picture ever. And the 2 hotel workers just outside the town of Calvine, Scotland, came back, and they were like telling their co-workers, oh my God, we encountered this thing, we don't know what it was. And so they go to the local newspaper, and they were like, hey man, we just filmed something in the sky. We got 6 prints of it. It was 35 millimeter film footage, right? And they're going to go public with their story. 2 witnesses, broad daylight, a UFO, points of reference, with a military jet flying around, 5 or 6 prints. That's pretty solid evidence, right? So the local newspaper was like, they're about to go public with it, print the story, and they were like, well, we need a statement from the RAF. So they contact the press officer, Craig Lindsay, and they were like, hey, what do you make of this UFO these guys took? And Craig Lindsay goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen the picture. You haven't seen it? Well, let me send you a print. This is the newspaper. Sends him a print, big print like this. It was the one you see today. And he's like, "Holt, the hell is this?" He's an RAF press officer, Craig Lindsay, and so he starts getting in touch with the MOD, and he goes out and he investigate this. Go talk to the witnesses. Talk to the witnesses, and they were telling him. And he goes, well, they tell him what happened, and he goes, well, what kind of noise did it make? And they said it didn't make any noise. No, he goes, no noise. That's impossible. You know, an object that can hover like that in the sky for that period of time. We're talking 34 years ago. It didn't make any noise. And the witness said no. So he was like, holy, this is crazy. So he takes a color Xeroxing machine, and he sends it to the MOD in London, and he says, hey, there's a case that you might want to check, you might want to look into, and here's a Xerox, which is really crappy. It's just a scanned Xerox, like a fax machine, over to MOD. He said he went from the office where the Xerox machine was, and before he can get back to his office, his phone was ringing off the hook, MOD. And the MOD basically stepped in, took over the investigation. They said, you can step down to Craig Lindsay. He steps down. He keeps the print. Right? He steps down, they take over, witnesses gone, 5 or 6 prints gone, story killed, right? So long story short, this guy, Richard Greaves, who was one of the hotel cooks, worked in the kitchen with the photographers, with the 2 witnesses that took the photograph. And Richard Greaves came forward on print. But I contacted David Clark. I was like, hey, can you get me an interview with this guy? And then probably about 10 o'clock that night, I'm in the edit room buttoning the film up, and all of a sudden I get a phone call, and he's like, I've just come out the pub, and I'm ready to go. I was like, okay, grab a camera, roll it, let's record this. And he reveals that he knew the witnesses. He worked with them in the kitchen. He gave all the specifics. He provided their names. And then he said that 4 nights after they took that photograph, they were all on a cigarette break at the hotel, early evening, pissing rain. He said a car rolled up. There were 3 guys in it, a driver and 2 men in suits in the back. They roll up. They come out. They say, cigarette break's over. They pull the 2 witnesses aside, and they grill him. And you got to hear it directly from the horse's mouth. Richard Greaves said that when they were all, the people that were not involved with the incident were told to go back inside the hotel, which they did, but they looked through the window and they saw in the pissing rain, he said they were out there for 10 or 15 minutes in the pissing rain, and that these guys, they came back inside and they were white as a, he said, he literally goes, they came back inside, they were white as a ghost. And which we all get a good laugh out of, but and then they started drinking heavily, and within a couple of weeks, they vanished without a trace, and they've been gone ever since.
So this is a better version.
Yeah, it's a better version that you could see the granular of the film footage.
It's weird. It almost looks like there's something in the back.
It does look a little bit like
a little
that.
propeller or something, like a Jetsons type thing.
But let's just say,
and that thing was silent, supposedly.
Silent, according to the witnesses. It didn't make any sound. It hovered there for an extended period of time, and when it took off straight vertical like this, straight up.
Fast?
It started going faster, and then was gone. Yep, that was Craig Lindsay who interviewed the witnesses who told me that. And it's so weird, though. According to Richard Greaves in Scotland, the Americans got involved.
Of course, we get involved in everything.
Yep, they showed up and they intimidated the shit out of the witnesses. And I know people can criticize me for reporting on these alleged men in black, but it's not me saying it. It's the witnesses that are saying it. And I did it full bore for the first time in Moment of Contact, because I remember hearing these stories for decades, and I finally was like, everyone's going to think I'm crazy if I report on this. But this lady, who was the mother of the 2 daughters that had these visits and the intimidation, and I was like, screw it, I'm just going to report on this, and I'll just take the criticism, you know.